Hey YouTube, what's going on? It's your boy Pikachu. Um, I wanted to actually respond to a comment, and I can't actually get this thing to pull up because it's not, for some reason, it's not changing my stuff for some reason. It's not changing my thing, and I don't know why. So it's kind of pissing me off right now, and I'm just a little bit upset. It's supposed to be, of course, doing this. I don't want to say. I'm supposed to be giving a psychological analysis of, you know, how should I say, prepper, this kind of doomsday prep sort of stuff, and of course, how they. Whoops, let me fix the lighting because my damn fucking light is in the way. Sorry about the lighting. But yeah, I'm trying to trying to respond to this comment as well as pull up some psychological analysis of doomsday preppers. So I'm going to respond to this comment. And what it is it's a comment on my video. The government is coming for Antifa and Black Lives Matter. So let's go through this and let's actually see what we can get out of it. Fuck. Everything would load faster, it'd be much easier. See, I hate this because on the previous setup, you could go ahead and change camera to whatever camera to you could change your camera to your screen, and here you guys can't see that, so I have to read it to you. This is from Colorado Biker Prepper. So this is the comment that he sent me, and I just want to read over this. I'm not the best reader, so don't fucking get mad at me. It's just the way it is. He says, bullshit, not mean to curse. I've been a subscriber to Prepper Nurse for years. He is one of the most level-headed preppers out there. He's good. I mean, he's a good guy and makes some good points. Well, I actually reviewed his video in full detail, and this guy was not of sound mind at all. Period. So to say it, he definitely had some mental problems. So let's go through this again more. You're making some assumptions that are unfounded and are not in context with what he is talking about. Okay, if you guys don't know, I basically was saying that, of course, he's delusional because he was talking about FEMA camps, etc., all this and that, whatever have you. And I was correct, and I did not take him out of context. You guys can go look that up. The video, my video and his video are both in the description below. It also this Colorado biker prepper also says first he is talking about a situation that involves what we preppers refer to as SHTF, which is said shit hits the fan, which, excuse my language again, it's not appropriate for what I want to do. So I said it, but obviously this is the commenter who said this. where normal day-to-day life has drastically changed for the worse. This could be caused by natural disasters such as a hurricane, earthquake, tsunami, flood, electromagnetic solar pulse from the sun. Then he goes on to talk about um, some event that happened in 1859. Of course, there wasn't the technology to prevent from electromagnetic pulses at the time, and they're getting a little bit better from what I hear at doing that. A severe blizzard uh, or severe drought. It could also be man-made event such as nuclear war, electromagnetic pulse again, of course, man-made this time, which, when you realize it, that's gonna probably be a localized event, probably not necessarily a global event, and the thing is with these electromagnetic impulses and even with nuclear warfare is that most states are going to be able to survive them, and they're going to have some kind of preparation, readiness to prepare society for dealing with this. This is just normal stuff. I know this because I lived during Hurricane Katrina, and I know the states around here, their preparedness element was to evacuate people from the area. It was based on what they call on red, green, and yellow zoning, which means red is basically where it's basically where it is a natural disaster zone and you have to evacuate the area, and any government and engagement in that area is to get you out of that area as permanently as possible. It also means that martial law is implied in that area. The yellow area means that there is some element where the government will help you evacuate, but the government also allows for people to come in, bring in supplies, bring in whatever. And then the green zone is, of course, everybody has to be prepared for people who come from the red zone. And of course, the government, has to take in measures to prepare for evacuees into that area, and that's usually their preparation awareness sort of stuff. And normally, when the government talks about preparing for certain types of events, they talk about you want to be rationally prepared, not you know all of a sudden buying up every gun in the planet to hold, because that's irrational, and I'll get into that later. And they don't want you buying, a whole house full of food, because that is also irrational, because you're not going to be needing any of that or all of it. So, and other people will be. So that that just doesn't make any sense. But yeah, people are, of course, this person is definitely a crazy lunatic. Um, he says electromagnetic impulse from North Korea. Well, the likelihood is that North Korea is not strong enough to cause any major attack to the United States at all. If you look at their military, it's just not possible. They can engage in terror attacks, but terror attacks again are local. They're not something that is most likely going to happen on a national scale, um, according to statistics. It's just not feasible. Um, then he goes on to say Iran or a rogue state or a terrorist group or whatever. Cyber terrorism, well, of course, that involves the internet. That's not going to really shut down the government by any means possible, seeing the fact that a lot of our government relies not on the internet. Um, Disabling our electrical grid, uh, financial I don't know how to say the word. Basically, he's saying about financial destruction or something like that, in which I can say this: if a financial collapse happens, it's going to lead to what's called a soft collapse, which normally leads to a civil war, which still means that there will still be some kind of government in place in either area. That's no doubt about it. Um, he goes on to say, um, other necessary informal technological sort of disabling of the internet. Okay, well, yeah, the internet isn't fully what the government basically is. The government has a lot of functions off of the internet. There's a lot of things that they do off of the internet. And as matter of fact, most of the stuff the government does is possibly off of the internet. Um, he also says chemical or biological warfare, civil war, unrest, uh, collapse of flat faith-based currency. Um, I don't think the currency system is necessarily based on faith. I think it's based on statistic value of how much it's worth relative to gold. That's pretty much how it is. Gold is already at a set basis in which it cannot be changed. But the thing is that uh money, however, currency goes up or down, meaning that the currency value of it fluctuates, but the gold's real material value never really changes at all. Um, that's from what I've been able to notice. Um, eh, he goes on to talk about Venezuela, what Venezuela is undergoing right now, which I don't really know what that is. Zimbabwe. Then, of course, he goes on to talk about the Weimar Republic. Well, Germany, you got to realize, yes, of course, the Weimar Republic did have a problem with the Great Depression, but there is something to note here. Um, the thing to note is that it took almost 8 to 10 years for Germany to become a neo-fascist state. And there was a point in time in between when the Weimar Republic was going through the depression, and then when, of course, it finally gave way. And that time, there was some economic growth. I mean, if you look up the history of it, there was actually a spurt of time where there was some economic growth in the Weimar Republic before it became a neo-fascist state. And then you had the element was that the way that Hitler came to power was he tried at first to overthrow the government the way that Mussolini did, but what really happened was he actually came to power legally through the president of the Weimar Republic establishing a chancellorship, or what we call here in the United States a vice presidency. And then he also came to legal power through the parliament, or what we would consider here in the United States as Congress, um, basically having the Nazis win elections across the board, and get what's called a hyper majority in Congress, or let's say maybe it may not be a hyper majority, but it may be at least a very strong super majority to the extent where they could actually, get rid of the presidency and, of course, any other forms of government that did not necessarily imply to Hitler. And of course, they had the legal capability of doing that in the Reichstag, and that's exactly what they did during 1933, so to speak. You can actually look up the information on that. He says also, and Armenia, which I'm not too familiar with. Civil insurrection, of course, that would be something that would involve a civil war. Civil war itself, another Great Depression. Of course, the government is not going to be collapsing directly to directly during a Great Depression. It may collapse because of one, and this will always lead to a civil war. But the thing is that, again, like I stated before with the Civil War, you're still going to have a government in place. So that's really not very great of an idea. He goes on to state the fall of a nation state, i.e., Rome, Chinese Han Dynasty, Ottoman Empire, um, the Mayan, whatever. Well, first off, Rome gave way to a very neo-religious society, and yes, it gave way to monarchism and to what's the word? It gave way to very forms of slavery and stuff like that, and it gave way to um, areas where states were controlled mostly by monarchs and etc. And there were states that existed during that time period, even though it seemed more anarchistic. And then, of course, the Ottoman Empire. Well, the Ottoman Empire gave way to modern day Syria, Iraq, Lebanon, and Turkey as well. Um, the Mayan Empire, it gave way to I think it gave way to the Aztecs, and so to speak. So the Aztecs, eventually the Aztecian empire or government took over the Mayans, and then, of course, the Spanish took over the Aztecs and killed them. And he goes on to say many more. As one of these so-called preppers, I am not a conspiracy theorist in the least. I seriously doubt that. I just want to make sure I have significant extra supplies in case of these, uh, any of these emergencies, be it storm, short term, or long term, regional, national, or worldwide catastrophe. Well, here's the first off thing. Having a lot of stuff is basically irrational for a lot of reasons. Uh, the thing is that in the case of a disaster like an issue like what happened in The Walking Dead, you have basically an area where the government can't, where of course, excuse me, um, where of course you will have small groups that will develop to, go out and scavenge and do whatever and whatever the bullshit is. and they will go off and hunt down basically anybody like this. And The Walking Dead, people who prepped did not live very long because they were targets. And you gotta realize you don't have the strategical advantage when you have a shit ton of crap, guns, food, whatever. It's just not a tactical position to have. And the reason why I state this is because, when you look at what I was saying earlier about the governments not wanting you to overdo how much you have, but just have enough for yourself. There's a realistic point of view of that. Of course, if you have 50 guns, you only have 2 hands. Okay, and if there's 50, 60, 70 something people out there that are hungry, that are looking to get guns from you, that are looking to basically do anything to you, you're not going to be able to stop them no matter how much you have. And then somebody who's armed with better guns, say for instance, a more powerful gun than what you have, or is armed with uh, more training than you have, then I'm sorry, you're dead. If they have a lot of training in ninjutsu or jujitsu, and they have, of course, long range military grade weaponry, just even one long range rifle, a pistol, and then some armor on, that's all they basically need to kill you with. And then maybe some kind of smoke grenade or something like that. But they really don't need a whole lot to kill you because they can kill you from a long range away. And you yourself, being the person who owns all this stuff, when you come out of the bunker, you come out of this, you got to realize that you're going to be the one who's in their sights. And you guys seen The Walking Dead. You guys seen how the saviors were to people. And of course, just imagine yourself being in a situation like what's going on, like what the show The Walking Dead has, even though it's not real, we know that. Um, you're a prepper, you have 50 something guns, you have a room, maybe the size of the room that I'm in, uh, full, stocked all the way up to the roof with, prepackaged food. And then all of a sudden, Simon, who just died, shows up with about, 200-300 people. He has, army Humvees that have bulletproof glass on. He's got one of them has a Barrett 50 caliber, fully automatic, well, not Barrett, but Browning, fully automatic, machine gun turret on it with bulletproof glass on it, as well as it being loaded with explosive incendiary rounds they stole from a military base. And there's around 200 people, like I said, each of them having, semi-automatic, assault rifles, or, any list of guns. And then some of them, the more higher ups, having, dragon skin armor on and this and that armor on. Uh, you're not gonna survive that, okay? You're better off handing off the shit and then giving up or dying, because that's pretty much what's gonna happen to you. Um, in a There's another thing too. As I stated before, national events are most likely are not gonna happen. Um, the statistics are purely to an extent where most likely there will be a government that exists, um, if there is a major national disaster, period. And you gotta look at this, when Nazi Germany was at war, you know, the areas that really had the most destructive points were the areas that were on the front. Most of the other areas were still able to survive to some extent. They still had some government there, even though, of course, they were bombing some of these areas. Again, the bombing was local and it was strategic, so to speak. So it was going after military targets and etc. Um, I think the bombing of Dresden might have been because they knew that the train tracks leading from Dresden went to Auschwitz, and they wanted to stop that. So that was one of the reasons why I think they bombed Dresden, but I'm not really so sure. Somebody can tell me in the comments. But yeah, worldwide catastrophe, something going up. It's excuse my phone. That is going to be a solar catastrophe, and you will not survive that, or that's just going to be a global catastrophe, which is going to make the world unable to be habitable. So you're not going to survive such a catastrophe at all. Period. You might as well just give up. Um, he says, I have already dealt with a short term regional emergency, a blizzard, in which, because of my preparedness, I was able to assist my immediate neighbors, 8 households, with, of course, food, medicine, essentials. I made a video about this on my channel. You can see it at whatever. And I actually clicked on the link that he pulled up, and it just links me to my regular YouTube feed. It doesn't link me to anything else. And he's talking about the blizzard of two. It's all anecdotal. It basically means shit to me. Excuse me again, but it doesn't mean anything at all to me. Um, just as I have a quote that, well, I don't know if you guys can see it here, but this is it. And it basically says the mind is fallible, its perception cannot be trusted by any means necessary in the realm of rational thought. What we perceive as reality isn't what reality really actually is, and that cannot be trusted as it is a perception made by a human mind. However, just because my mind's perception may be wrong does not mean that everyone else is right. We can only trust what is known to be proven fact by the scientific method. Now, here's the deal. This quote, if I could put it up, was originally made to combat anecdotal sort of stuff. It was made to combat um, the anecdotal fallacy in my family, so to speak. So I had made prints of it, and I had given it to them during Christmas, and I think I gave my immediate family some actually framed uh, prints last year, not this year. And I really don't think its effects really did very much, but at least it put something into them. He also states, we were stranded at home for more than 6 miles from town on top of a mountain for 13 days. During that time, I fed about 25 people per week. This, okay, This is what I mean by irrational, because those people can take advantage of you, and they probably were taking advantage of this guy. And again, this is all anecdotal evidence, so it doesn't really mean anything to me by any definition at all. I mean, you got to realize too, the government did not collapse just because of this event. So he goes on to say, just this one example of small regional short-term event, but there have been large ones recently, Hurricane Katrina, Sandy Hook, as well as the dire situation in Syria were trapped in civilians, whatever. Okay, well, here's the deal in Syria. Syria, you have small, um, almost nano states that are heavily based on religion. And in Katrina, again, it's like I stated before, to anybody, even anybody who lived in the city for an extent. And man, it opened up October, but you know, the thing was again was that our government was able to reestablish our city, and we didn't have very much of a problem. And the thing was that you also have to know about 98%, maybe if not more, of the entire city was evacuated from the city before the hurricane, so to speak. So 98% of people were still in a civilized area, even, when this happened. So there really isn't or this and that or any of that just due to Hurricane Katrina. And like I said before, it was rebuilt, and we're looking into the facts or the reasons to why, uh, you know, such things like hurricanes happen. We're looking into um, trying to do the best we can as far as a state, as far as Louisiana, as far as things like Louisiana State University, and of course the the legislation that they're trying to do to pass to fix the coastline or something like that, from what I know. Now, again, this is a GOP state, so you can't really trust that. Stating that approximately 5 years ago, I was approached by the producers of the television show Doomsday Preppers. Doomsday Preppers. Um, if you guys don't know, this is the show that I talked about in the video, that where, of course, people were going into basically for just getting notification, or they, of course, obviously were delusional like this guy is. And after many emails and talking to them over the phone, I refused to have anything to do with their bullshit, excuse me, primarily because they demanded that I state only one reason for my prepared for my being prepared for emergencies, as well as watching a few of their shows filled with sensationalism. Well, I would say you guys definitely tend to be, um, I don't know what to say the word. You guys definitely tend to over exaggerate certain things to an extent where it actually is a danger for you, and that is a problem. Hyperbolic and outright what's that word? Misrepresentations. Instead of producing a serious show about the reality of those in the prepper community, they made the majority of us look like conspiracy theories. Well, to be honest with you, most of you guys are. That's just the point taken. Doomsday preppers, it just seems that you guys are. Um, National Geographic should be ashamed and embarrassed to be associated with the shit production, excuse my language again, company that produced the series of them. Well, you know what? I mean, they're out of for money, so to speak. So, you know, of course they're going to do what they're going to do. But these people, the people who in the show, they literally believe what they believe. So, I mean, that's why some of them literally believe what they believe, and that's why they need to be instituted. And then some of them, it's just all it is just the notoriety, and that's all they care about because there was one guy I remember was on Doomsday Preppers who I said here, who I said in that video, he sold all of his stuff because he was on that show and he got the notoriety that he wanted. And you know what? He just, well, felt, yeah, well, I don't need to have any of the things that I had. And he was possibly right, so to speak. So, in a way, he was spending all this money to make more money on a damn show, which some people do that for some reason. Um, of course, there are some in the preparedness community that are insane. Actually, pretty much all of you guys are, except for those who prepare rationally for rational reasons. And like I said, when I say rational reasons, I mean preparing for things that are likely to happen in your region, not just preparing for anything under the sun. Because if you prepare for everything equally, the problem is you're most likely not going to be prepared for some of the things that you think you're going to be prepared for. So, you know, there's going to be a lot of situations where you're not going to be fully prepared for it. And that's a big problem. Um, says lunatics, particularly the apocalyptic, the evangelical Christians. Well, I would say about 90% of the people in your little group, uh, this little group is basically evangelical Christians who are conspiracy theorists and apocalyptic people. That's without a doubt because I don't think that there's too many preppers in other, developed nations across the world. Also, other groups of extremists with strange and complex, unfounded. I'm not saying theories. I'm going to say hypothesis because he obviously does not know what theories is. Theories is basically a scientific fact, not what he is stating here. And they're not in a hypothesis; they're a claim because a hypothesis is a supported claim, but it's not something that is found as a fact, and theories are basically a fact, and anybody who does not use the scientific definition of theory should just basically remove the entire, uh, is the colloquial thing because, well, they're not using the actual definition of theory at all, period. And when they use the word theory under the colloquial term, they're not using the word theory, they're using claim. and so to speak. So they need to change the word from theory to claim and keep it X claim, not theory. Oh shit, my feet are getting a little weird. Um, there are some completely crazy people in the preparedness community, which give the majority of us good people in it a bad name. Well, I hate to tell you this, but I would say, like I said before, the majority of people in who are preppers, who are doomsday preppers, are basically conspiracy theorists. Uh, Prepper nurse is actually doing something good for his family, excuse me, community and local environment. Well, I don't know. I mean, I've seen another one of his videos where the only thing he was doing is he was just building solar panels. Um, but in the video that I described above, he came across to me, as I said, as somebody who needed to be instituted because, he has really weird beliefs and they're not normal. And to do some of the things that's being stated that, was going on in that video it's not normal behavior, and if he saw a psychiatrist, they would put him in a, in a mental institution. There's no doubt in my mind that they would do that. Um, he is self-sufficient electronically, his water supplies in other ways. I can tell you this, there are certain elements where the thing is that, like I said before, you can't be prepared for everything that's gonna happen all at one time. Something that you're not prepared for is going to, if apocalypse happens, something that you're not prepared for is probably likely gonna happen. Most of those most of us, and he said those in the preparedness community work toward being self-sufficient and want to be able to be less dependent on our current social infrastructure. Well, I can tell you this, guess what? That's a bullshit lie because, excuse my language again, because no matter what you do, you're gonna be sufficient on the social structure, period. Okay, you cannot go 2 second steps without having to, rely on something to do with the social structure. You're going to have to buy something that is made by a corporation regardless whether you like it or not, period. And I mean, you may not do a lot of that, but that's likely what's gonna happen. Actually, that is what's gonna happen when you try to do this, even if you limit your amounts. That's why, like I say about the religious people who were talking about protesting Target, uh, 2 years ago, where they were protesting it because, Target was, allowing the LGBT community to basically go in any restroom they want and allowing basically open bathrooms. And people were just, going on saying, "Oh, I'm gonna protest this because, you know what, transgender people are going in the same in whatever bathroom they fucking feel like it." And then you know what? And they were saying basically that these people are pedophiles and this and that without any scientific evidence to say that they were pedophiles, which basically means that they're bullshitting. Again, excuse me, but it definitely does mean that they were BSing. And, again, they were forced into a situation where they had to go rely upon a corporation, which, of course, you know, led to them it it basically meant that no matter what they did, they had to do it. I mean, because if every company across the globe, uh, did do this and all of a sudden, every evangelical Christian decided to become a prepper or whatever, then, or self-sufficient or whatever, then, even in self-sufficiency, you would still have to rely upon places like Home Depot and like Lowe's, and you would have to rely upon other corporations for the building of the technology that you need to have just to keep up. And you still would have to rely upon, the tech companies, etc., just to have your computer and your internet, etc., blah 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 blah. And again, that is turning back to companies that support the LGBT community. So guess what? You have to break your own code of laws, code of ethics, I meant to say, to live in this situation. That's why these people are crazy. Now, let's see what else is here to say. Um, he says, uh, we like to garden, raise chickens, other livestock, make our own electricity supplies, and our own water, and many more things. I don't mind you wanting to do all that stuff. That doesn't matter. But the thing is that you're still going to have to rely upon the social structure in order to do some of those things. I mean, uh, see, the problem is with this is that if you're basically raising livestock, but you're not following code like city ordinance or any of that sort of stuff, there's a lot of shit that you can get, or excuse me, a lot of things that you could get fined for doing that. And that is clear that, a lot of that would be there's there's a lot of chance you could get into big trouble for not, following the regulations for doing this. I mean, the, what was it? The, Amish community, which was another evangelical religious whatever community, a cult actually, um, they got into some excuse me for doing a Freudian slip, but they got into some, disputes with the government where they weren't creating they weren't creating an environment that was very healthy for certain areas, and they were violating certain ethics codes or something like that, and they were getting into a whole heap of shit, excuse me again, from the government. So it was just crazy. um You have completely misrepresented prepper nurses' position and intent, and should be ashamed for making those assumptions and unfounded assumptions. Well, to be honest with you, none of my what I stated is basically assumptions, and they're not unfounded. They are pretty factual, and no, I should not be ashamed of doing that. Obviously, my channel is geared towards debunking. It's not geared towards, just, praising people who are on the internet. I'm deeply sorry for that. But my that's not what my channel is geared towards. And I think you should know that if you would've looked at my other videos. I think you will discover that you were very wrong on your assertion that on your assessment and owe him an apology. No, I don't, and I'll tell you why. I don't owe him an apology because my channel is geared towards debunking lunatics, crazy people, religious people, people, people who make false claims, people who make assertions, people who do things that are unscientific. So, I don't need an apology. I don't owe somebody who, of course, is a nut job, who, needs to be instituted. I'm sorry for doing too much, but I don't need to apologize to somebody who needs to be instituted for, uh, whatever purposes or reasons. I'm sorry, but that just does not need to happen at all. Oh, we're getting some chats here. Bullshit again. Um, I'm the one that's commenting on Pikachu. This is the video he's talking about. He's reading my comment. Okay, yeah. I'm definitely reading your comment, and I'm sorry, but you know what? Yeah, your stuff is what you said in there's isn't really factual. Mm. No, I was actually, as I said before, I was debunking, um, Prepper Nurse's video. That's pretty much that's the truth about it. I'm sorry, I'm not gonna do that. Okay, so let's go on and say this. He says, of course, the person who's in the comments now, you're basically saying, if you would like, maybe we could have a hangout with him and discuss the topic in detail and inform you further on preparedness community. Uh, all I can say to that is no, thank you. There are some extremely good people in the preparedness community who are very rational and sensible. I beg to differ that big time. I know this has been a very long response for your video, but I thought I needed to clarify things. Well, to be honest with you, would have been I don't know what to say. I mean, this is not something I think you should have done. Um, if you have any further questions or would like to talk to someone about this, please feel free. No, I'm probably not going to because, I mean, as I said before, my channel is a debunking channel, so to speak. So obviously, if I go into talking to them, I'm going to use straight epistemology and I'm going to use the Socratic method because I'm going to want to get to the root reason to why they believe in what they believe because we know without a doubt that it is false. So um to state this, uh, preppers, I think, have oh, he's calling me a coward. Well, I can say this right now, I'm not a coward, it's just I'm not going to deal with people who are not rational, so to speak, that's the point thing. Um, there is something I wanna bring up here. Of course, I tend to think that preppers have a very, very, well, it's actually more true that preppers, like I said before, put themselves at risk if in case a, major disaster happens or something like that. That's pretty factual. Here we have a paper from it's a peer review paper from Google Scholar. I should have put it in the link. I should have put it somewhere, but I did. It's from the University of Western Illinois or Western Illinois University, and it is basically preppers a printer for public safety professionals. Um, this gives a very strong um, description of what I think the psychology is in the preparedness, whatever aspect. It says here, 2013, a Swedish sociologist member describes preppers as survivalists and as members of society who are consistently preparing for inter impediment on social collapse or due to terrorism, um, or whatever natural disaster it is, and a shortage of resources, economic downfall, or what they anticipate as an unexpected apocalyptic events, such as a result, they consistently stock up on food, weapons, supplies, and even create personal safe houses or shelters. They train with firearms and are ac- acquire medical knowledge to be prepared for a variety of crises. Um, the thing is that it's like I said again, some of this is not rational sort of preparedness. And what I mean by rational preparedness is that, like, you want to have the least amount of stuff is not the you want to have some stuff, but you don't want to have an extreme overload of stuff because, like I said before, you become a target. And then down here in New Orleans, when Hurricane Katrina hit, if you were to be in this area during the storm, or not in this area, but in the areas west of here, east of here, um, there was areas where three-story buildings were damaged beyond repair on the second and both the first and second floors, so to speak. So if you're a prepper and you had only a one-story house and you lived in New Orleans East, I'm sorry, but all your stuff would have been gone, period, and it would have been useless to prepare for that, and you probably could have died if you would have stayed in that sort of situation because that's how bad Hurricane Katrina was. Um, uh, Preppers are reports on survivalist in Recent times emerge in the news and relate to rational survivalist encounters with law enforcement, however, agencies such as the Rudy Ridge 1992 and Branch Davidianism complex in 1993 and the bombing of the federal building in Oklahoma, I think that is. These survivalist groups were hostile to they basically were hostile to the government, and I think the reason why they were was because of people like Alex Jones, etc., etc. Um, the paper goes on to say that they were hostile to government agencies as well for, I mean, non-rational reasons. Um, the rationality for such U.S. based groups to isolate and cave vary from white supremacy to apocalyptic millennialism. Um, Again, these are not rational reasons to have any sort of preparedness. The A cultural anthropologist, Chad Hudson, 2013, investigated the prepper phenomenon, noted that some preppers view personal television programs such as Doomsday Preppers, but as they consider the popularity of the series only as a entertainment. However, they continue to collect significant stores of food, water, and ammunition of particular interest to people, safety and health professionals who may encounter preppers in crisis. Hudson indicates that they do not want to be identified as doomsday preppers, which they are. Um, they want to be identified as survivalist. Hudson emphasizes that preppers seek to avoid being banished as preparing for the end. Seek to avoid being branded for preparing for the end of the world. Peter Berhans, a Penn State psychologist and professor who researched whose research focuses on the history of psychology of abnormal psychological views preppers as a cult. Uh, Reporting in the international hubs of drugs is a scenario. Um, Actually, I'm not going to read the entire paper, but it is on Google Scholar to be found. However, you can only download it. It's not something that you can just view um, on on Google Scholar itself. So yeah, but there is a part where they do say that a um, being a prepper is basically dangerous. I would like to go ahead and see if I can find that section. It's in the conclusion. Preppers. Preppers do not lead isolated lives in a traditional sense. Well, see, the thing is that it's like I said before. faced in a scenario where there's, you know, 30 or so people with the same armed guns as you, and you only have 2 hands, no, it doesn't matter how many guns you have, how much this you have, likelihood is they're gonna fucking kill you and take their stuff from you, or take your stuff from you, and, the situation is in areas like, in the thing like what happened in, The Walking Dead, if that were to be real, the situation would be that you have people who, like I said before with Simon, when Simon was, alive in the series, who would have stolen things from military bases, possibly even AC-130s and, M1 Abrams tanks, and, what are you going to do if you have a weapon that's not just a standard just a standard weapon is not going to be able to take out that sort of military grade equipment, and they could kill you instantly with an AC-130. It's not even a matter of questioning. So, and, groups like that during that type of, event would have scouts. They would have people who would scout you, and then the scouts can also kill you as well, too, from long range. They are going to have a more tactical advantage than you think, because they can sit there and they can watch you all day long, and then they can just pick the time to kill you, obviously, if you know any of that sort of stuff. So, yeah, it's not a good idea to overload on your things, and even in the scenarios like what The Walking Dead showed, um, the best thing to do is to be involved with a group of people and to, of course, if you get lucky and have a group of people, go on your side as a prepper, that's okay, but the thing is to know that even with that show, almost be maximum maybe 2 years unless you're very, very lucky like Rick, Daryl, and, let's see. So far as I can tell, all he is talking and the so-called debunking are nothing more than filthy veiled ad hominems. No, they're not. So, I mean, they're attacking an idea, not a personality. So it's not an ad hominem. And I could say this too, that you in that comment uh seem to be making, like I said before, a lot of anecdotal stuff that does not mean anything to anybody who's rational. So yeah, sorry, but uh, you have to do, see, as I have stated in my old other videos for other things, if you wish to get us on your side, to get those in who are atheists, who are skeptics, who are this, who are that, on your side, you have to play our game, and that means that you have to have scientific empirical data to prove your point. If you don't, then guess what? It's sorry, but it's not gonna happen, period. It's just not. You're not going to convince, um, a skeptic or an atheist or somebody like that who's doing the research on this sort of thing to, to come to the conclusion because sometimes some of us probably know more than you think we know. So, yeah, don't, um, don't don't do that. Just don't do that, okay? He's saying, "Please do some more research." Actually, I have done some research on it. So, um, like I said, I went on Google Scholar, which is a site that is a search engine site that is used for searching peer-reviewed papers, and they can be, seen as peer-reviewed papers because they are, and, yeah, and I've done research on other sites too, but the thing is you wanna stay away mostly from Google or from those other sites. You want to go onto a site that searches peer-reviewed papers because um you're gonna run into people who are biased, people are delusional, people are very filled with conspiracy theories and etcetera, blah, 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 all things that I fight against, okay? So, period, point blank. We could provide you some scientific data if you uh, again, like I said before, I mean, I seriously doubt you guys would have very much scientific data. I think the most that I would do is I would end up having to revert to, Socratic questioning and etcetera to see why you guys believe that, and, of course, that's pretty much what I'm going to resort to. So, yeah, I it would just end up being a almost like an interview with me being the one asking the questions. That's pretty much what it would be, and it would be me asking questions to figure out the root reason to why you get to believe in this and maybe try to work you off of the belief system in some sense. That's all it would be, period. And, right now, I don't in this scenario, I don't have the, I don't really I'm not really in the mood to actually do even though normally I will do that to people. In this case with Prepper Nurse 1, I'm not really in the mood to do it to him. Why don't you have a civil conversation in the with someone in the community? Well, I mean, the reason is because most of you guys are just the people in the prepper community from what has been seen, just seem to have a whole bunch of nothing but conspiracy filled stuff, and from what you presented me with, it's nothing but, anecdotal sort of stuff. It's nothing but, logical fallacies, so there's just no argumenting there. It's not even the thing that I can actually argument with, so there's no point in even discussing it. I'm mouthing off assertions. No, I'm not. I'm sorry. Assumptions, I meant to say. Dude, the reason why it seems that way is because, like I said, most of you guys are following, Alex Jones, etc. Well, yeah, I'm not willing to engage this sort of thing. So, yeah. All right, I'm going to end the stream, and that's going to be it. And I will see whoever's on here later. Bye.